Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Schmooze Fest 2017. A couple of ground rules. We will ask some rapid-fire kind of yes-no questions. The questions that aren't rapid-fire, the candidates are going to have 90 seconds to answer. There are a couple of timekeepers sitting in front of you. When they put up the yellow sign, it means you have 30 seconds left. When they put up the red sign, it means time's up. They're also going to let us know when we get toward closing time. That's it. So let me quickly introduce the candidates, this group of dedicated public servants. To my immediate left is Prince George's County Executive Rushern Baker, who also previously spent 2 terms in the House of Delegates. These guys are all sitting in alphabetical order, I should say, in case anybody wondered. Next to him is Maya Rocky Moore Cummings, a policy consultant and former congressional aide. Next is Ben Jealous, an activist best known for his tenure as NAACP president, also works for an investment firm that specializes in socially responsible and progressive investing. Ben Jealous. Next is Baltimore County Executive Kevin Kamenetz, who is finishing his 2nd term as county exec and previously spent 4 terms on the county council. Kevin Kamenetz. Next, State Senator Rich Madaleno, in his 3rd term in the Senate, previously served 1 term in the House of Delegates. Rich from Montgomery County. Next is Alec Ross, a tech entrepreneur, author, former State Department official under Hillary Clinton, and former public school teacher, Alec Ross. Next is Jim Shea, former managing director of the Venable Law Firm in Baltimore and former chairman of the State Board of Regents. Jim Shea. And then we have Krish Vignaraja, a former policy director to Michelle Obama in the White House, who also has worked for the State Department. So, Krish Vignaraja. So let's start, and we'll start. This is a question for everybody. We'll move down the line. We'll start with County Executive Baker this time, but after this question, we'll jump around in terms of order. So we're sitting in Montgomery County. It's the largest jurisdiction in the state, and in some ways, the most misunderstood jurisdiction in the state. And I think a lot of people in this room, certainly a lot of the elected officials, get beat up for assumptions about this county that no longer really apply. So I guess I would ask each of you, how do you view Montgomery County's image and role in the state? And starting with you, County Executive Baker.
Well, is this on? I would normally come over here and say that Prince George's County is the economic engine of the Washington region. I dare say the state of Maryland. But I told the county executive I wouldn't say that this time. No, I think the reputation of Montgomery County is great throughout the state. I think the misunderstood part is, and I think you're seeing that, many people around the state view Montgomery County as being very wealthy, and therefore we like your tax dollars. And we like your tax dollars to help us. And don't appreciate, and I do because I'm in the Washington region, appreciate the challenges you do have. Your county is very diverse, and with that diversity is great strength, but it's also great challenges, not only for your school system, but also for your housing needs, for your transportation needs. And those are the things that we have to address because it's not just a distant part of the state, it is a critical part of the state. And it's one that affects us in Prince George's County. And so I think that's the misunderstood part, is that when we talk about solving the challenges in the state, we sometimes forget there are challenges right here in Montgomery County, and I understand that because I'm right next door. Thank you.
So I would actually associate myself with those remarks, but I would go farther. I actually view Montgomery County as a leader in many respects. On policy issues, definitely. I mean, being the first in the state to actually embrace an enhanced minimum wage countywide is certainly no joke. It's something that I think that the rest of the counties in the state have to seriously consider, and I think the state overall needs to consider as something that should be implemented. I also think that what you're prioritizing in terms of the environment is critically important. The fact that we're hearing that in the face of the collapse of the Paris Climate Accords at the national level, that you're seriously considering how to become a reduced emissions county is certainly very important, certainly for the state of Maryland, and I thank you for your leadership in that. There are so many areas that you are a leader in that I think that it's just critically important that we recognize that, because I think that there are examples right here in Montgomery County that the state can actually follow as an example. And so with that, I want to thank you for the question.
Mr. Tellis?
You know, I don't think you'll hear much disagreement from us this morning on many questions, including this one. But I would say to you this, that the future of this county really will define the future of our state. This is a very diverse county that gets more diverse all the time. It's a county that's known for its great schools, and yet those schools are facing real challenges and need more investment. This is a county where our health sciences really flourish and help drive the economy. And yet we know we could be doing better, we could be doing more. We used to be third in the country as a state when it came to our health sciences industry. Now we're somewhere in the bottom half of the top 10. And so investing in Montgomery County is really about investing in the future of our state. If we get it right here, we can get it right in the rest of the state. And somebody with 2 children in the public schools here, you can count on me to be very invested in ensuring that the schools flourish both in Montgomery and across our state.
Mr. Kamenetz?
Well, good morning to everyone. I'm Kevin Kamenetz. I'm the Baltimore County Executive. I'm a lifelong Marylander, and I'm a lifelong Democrat. I can tell you that many of the problems that we face in Montgomery County are issues that we're dealing with statewide. Obviously, we have a real issue with education taking place here, with an underfunding of school construction funds coming from the state. We have real transportation problems. Having just rode 2 hours to get here this morning, I can attest to that personally. And of course, we still need opportunities for equity and economic development. As Baltimore County Executive, I've improved our schools, building or rebuilding 90 schools, having a graduation rate that exceeds the state average. I've created jobs by taking a underutilized steel mill and turning it into the largest industrial intermodal redevelopment in the country, with 17,000 jobs at Trade Point Atlantic, with the likes of FedEx and Under Armour and Amazon, and cutting our unemployment rate in half. We need to have a governor who has a track record of experience to help solve these problems. That's the kind of leadership I've done in Baltimore County, and those are the kind of real results we're going to bring to Montgomery County, particularly with transportation issues, focusing on solutions like the Corridor Cities Transitway that we have to get funded and move forward to resolve 270. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Madaleno.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Rich Madaleno, and I'm a state senator from Montgomery County. So when it comes to being able to explain our county to the rest of the state, I think I have a unique perspective of the people who are up here, since I've lived in this county since 1968. Because of that, I want to take one moment of personal privilege to thank Ike Leggett, who will be attending and speaking at his last Committee for Montgomery breakfast as our county executive. And this is what, and you know, the county executive, the council president talked about this in their remarks. We are a community in transition. We are in a community in transition with our elected officials, as we're going to have a whole new generation of people come in. We're in a transition economically. We're in a transition with how we organize ourselves from a suburban community to urban to rural. Our state is in a transition. We are well positioned in order to lead the state to dealing with these transitions, to help approach the challenges we face moving forward. Because quite frankly, we have big challenges in mobility, in education, in environment, and we need a Montgomery voice for the very first time in our state history as your governor. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ross?
Good morning, everyone. So the question was, what is the reputation of Montgomery County? What is the reality of Montgomery County? And what is the role of Montgomery County? Well, what I'd say is first that the reputation and reality of Montgomery County are two different things. I mean, the reputation of Montgomery County is that this is sort of, the streets are paved in gold. These are big mansions in Potomac and Bethesda and nothing else. That's the reputation. The reality is, guess what? You have 55,000 students in your public schools that get free and reduced lunches. That is nearly the total number that's in all of Baltimore City. The reality is that 30% of your students are speaking English as a second language. The reality is that Montgomery County is a spectacularly diverse place. What is the role of Montgomery County? Let me ask two things of you. Number one, leadership through diversity. I think the fact that 30% of the students who are in your public schools speak English as a second language is a strength. And it ought to be the case that when you drive under a sign that says, "Welcome to Maryland," you're entering the resistance to the kind of nastiness that's coming out of Trumpism on issues of diversity. You can demonstrate how we achieve inclusive diversity here. Second thing, Montgomery County Community College. I think that community colleges are a great path to upward economic mobility for a large swath of Marylanders. You've got the best one in the state.
Time's
I
up.
would love for that to be a model for what we do statewide.
Mr. Shea?
Yeah, I'm Jim Shea. I'm a progressive Democrat who built a business. And when I built a business, which it grew by 1,000% over 22 years, I built on strength. I made the strongest pieces stronger so they could help everyone else. Montgomery County is a leader and the strength in Maryland, and we can do more. You have two great institutions of higher learning, Shady Grove and Montgomery College. We can make them stronger. And when we do, the graduates of those schools will stay here and stay in Maryland. And that is so, so important. In K through 12 education, you have great leaders here. Britt Kerwin is here, Senator King, Senator Madaleno, Councilman Rice. Councilman Rice is here. You're leading us in K through 12. You're doing the PAR program, which is so effective for teachers in this state. And we will advance those across the state, making them statewide and our state stronger out of your strength. Thank you.
Ms. Vignaraja?
Good morning. I think part of the strength of Montgomery County is the fact that many of you woke up at 7 a.m. and I sort of see the fact that you have such incredible attendance is the strength of this county. For me, I am a transplant. I actually voted with my feet, and so we moved from Baltimore County to Montgomery County just this summer. And to me, that is actually the appeal of this county. When people talk about Maryland being America in miniature, I think Montgomery County is why America in miniature is epitomized here. Because for us, when we made the decision to move, it was about the educational strength of this county. It was about the diversity of this county. That is partly why Maryland is, I think, one of the best states in this country. Because you look across this crowd and you see how many ethnic groups are represented, how many other groups are represented in terms of the diversity. But I also think what you see is some of the concern I have about Maryland, which is that there are two Marylands, and obviously a few folks on this panel have talked about it, but there are disparities within the county. You can see schools that are world class and you see schools that are struggling. And I think that's where, for me, what is most important is that we take advantage of the fact that Montgomery County has been on the vanguard of many issues. And so when you look at laboratories of experimentation, what I will do as governor is take what you have done here and grow it. Montgomery Cares is a perfect example of where, when we know so many things are happening on the national level with healthcare, there is an opportunity to take advantage of what you've done here. When it comes to economics, obviously
Time's
a
up.
lot of us realize that it is less business friendly than it could be, but we can change that. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of people have mentioned it, and certainly everyone I've talked to this morning mentioned it, whether they were coming from 10 minutes away or from far reaches of the state, but the traffic here is horrible. Governor Hogan has proposed widening I-270, the Capitol Beltway, and the Baltimore-Washington Parkway to help alleviate traffic congestion. And he wants to pay for it, at least in part, by installing express lanes with tolls. I would like to ask each of you, starting with Mr. Jealous and then moving down, what do you think of that idea, and what would you do to alleviate the choking traffic problem in this region?
Hogan on so many issues is trapped in the 1970s. I get, as somebody who uses the 200 sometimes to get my kids to school, that we need to put all of the options on the table. But we need to be forward-thinking and actually embrace transportation solutions for this century. Bus rapid transit, we have, as is planned, coming down 29. Ensuring that we fund the metro fully. Making sure that we are on the we're on the cutting edge when it comes to the latest ways to get transportation connected to folks and get them quickly to where they want to go. Shutting down 2 bus lanes for northern Montgomery County is exactly the wrong thing to do. We have to make sure that the working people of this county are connected into their jobs and into the economy. And we have to make sure that our kids can move around to their schools and their social events safely. And that's why you can count on me to make sure that we plan transportation for this century. Unlike Hogan, I will not be living in some nostalgia about the 1970s and that we should just keep building for cars. We've got to build for our needs now.
County Executive Candidates.
This is a real opportunity in this next election to have a real conversation about where we're going with transportation. Right now, you've got a governor who is the self-proclaimed king of highways. He's against mass transit. He killed the red line in Baltimore. He watered down the purple line, so now it's the lavender line right here. And he refuses to fund the Great Corridor Cities Transitway project. He's just left it laying there without offering real solutions. Everything is optics about this guy. He promises a $9 billion fantasy to widen 495 with 4 lanes. It doesn't matter that there are parks and homes and hospitals in the way. He pretends that somehow this is going to be done without using taxpayer dollars. We need adequate funding for the metro system. We need to move forward again with the corridor plan so that we can get 270 and those 36,000 daily trips off of the highway and into mass transit. And we need to have someone who embraces the technologies of our future. Governor Hogan cut the tolls, and isn't that great? Because it polls well, but what he really cut was $54 million a year out of the transportation budget, and we're still stuck in traffic.
Senator Madaleno.
So, when you look at what has happened during the Hogan administration, I think you can see no better example of his failed leadership style. He made an announcement on the morning of Rosh Hashanah with 24 hours notice that he was going to widen the Beltway, 270 and the BW Parkway by 4 lanes. Did he talk to Ike? Did he talk to Rushern? Did he talk to the council? Did he talk to us? Nobody. Nobody. He stood at a press conference and said, I can do it. I don't need you. I don't need any of them. Is that the way to govern? Is that the way to move a community forward? Our council for years has asked for a widening of 270 from Shady Grove to Frederick, adding 2 reversible lanes. We could do that and move progress forward for one of the most congested parts of the country. But are we really going to double deck the Beltway through Montgomery County? Holy Cross Hospital, how is that going to fit right there as you do that curve? We all drive the Beltway. Where do you fit 4 lanes? It's an example of the type of executive overreach of the Hogan administration, and an example of how little he knows our community, that he was willing to stand there on the morning of Rosh Hashanah and say, we can do it, and I don't need any of you, and you'll all pay for it in tolls, not a dollar of tax revenues. It's a fool's plan, and I will reverse it as governor.
Mr. Ross?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to hear a lot of disagreement. When I actually read his plan, I was just like, all right, well, they aren't doing drug testing in the office of the governor. I'll tell you what, no, it read like the interns wrote it that morning. I got to tell you, it's really pretty silly. Let me make a serious point or two. First of all, we need to pivot to 21st century transportation infrastructure. We should be making a multi-year significant investment in Metro. We need to really pivot towards mass transit. I can't believe how long it has taken to bring 16.2 miles of mass transit online with the Purple Line. We need to giddy up, and we need to really recommit ourselves to mass transit. But let me make a final point. There was a really insidious aspect of this plan of Larry Hogan's, which was these Lexus lanes. You know, the tolls to actually take these lanes would be $20 or more. So think about this. What this literally means is you're wealthy, you get to work faster. You're middle class or lower income, you get there slower. This is, to me, representative of the kind of inequality that is spreading in the United States right now and is malignant. If anything ought to be democratic, it's the roads.
Mr. Shea?
For 10 years, I was chair of the Central Maryland Transportation Alliance, which is a coalition of labor, business, higher education, and nonprofits. We were, and they still are, dedicated to mass transit and relieving the congestion so all of us can get out of our cars and get to work and enjoy life. The first thing we need is a plan. We need a statewide plan for mass transit and public transportation. We don't have one, and as a result, when there are improvements, as occasionally there are, they're scattered, they're isolated, and you have roads to nowhere. So the first thing we need is a plan. The plan has to emphasize mass transit. Governor Hogan's announcement had within it a wonderful admission. He says $9 billion are available for the improvement of transportation in this state. He's right. We do have the money. We need the political will. We need to take that $9 billion and spend it well. Spend it on a dedicated source of revenue for Metro, a statewide plan that includes everyone and gets people to their jobs on time.
Speaker Raja.
I'm glad Josh asked the question because I do think that this is a perfect example of what I'm going to start describing as Hogan's election year epiphanies. After doing nothing for 3 years on transportation, all of a sudden he decided to announce and rename the ICC after the only other one-term Republican governor. And this is where I do think that we need to start imposing solutions that actually are evidence-based. So for me, the question is, given the fact that for each of us, every single individual in this state, it costs about $1,500 in lost wages and wasted gas because of the rush hour commutes that we deal with. And I talked about this in a personal sense in the fact that my husband, who commutes to Reston, Virginia, as well as DC, oftentimes it takes him an hour and a half to 2 hours. And that's time that he's not spending with us at dinner time, right? That is the cost of the issue that we're talking about. And so for me, and you'll hear this as a recurring theme, it is about evidence-based decision-making. I'm not against us increasing the number of roads we have, but we have to think about the fact that we have Department of Transportation here saying that expanding the roads is at best a 2 to 4 year solution. And in the short term, what's going to result is an increased time because of the construction of it. So for me, it's about thinking about what multimodal transportation systems we can employ. It's about, can we use the expansion of roads to put reversible lanes, as Rich mentioned? Can we use ride sharing? Can we use buses? We know all of these options as well as mass transit are there, but we need to have a more holistic approach.
Mr. Baker.
Maya was gone.
Sorry.
No. First of all, I think we're all going to agree on what everyone's been saying. But I was struck as I was listening to everyone talk. You got to give the governor credit. That was a pretty politically great move. It was. I'm not even joking about it. The next day, the Washington Post wrote an article about how he's addressing serious issues. That for the Democratic candidates have talked about the fact that he's not really addressing those. He did. He offered a plan. The fact that he has no money to build the plan doesn't mean that. We're all talking about it. What we're not talking about, and we face it in the Washington region, and we face it across the state, is that yes, we're going to do the Purple Line. It's because Montgomery County put in extra money. You're taxed twice. Prince George's County put in extra money. We're taxed twice for a statewide issue. We know that we have to invest in mass transit, that we need to invest in the metro in the Washington region. We need to invest in the Baltimore region. And the reason we need to do that, that gives us the greatest opportunity to grow our business there and get more money into our coffers so we can deal with the other issues. But then we're going to have to talk about what we're willing to give up. What are you willing to give up in terms of transportation dollars? Because every jurisdiction is fighting for it. Whether you're in Western Maryland or Prince George's County, we're all fighting for transportation dollars. So how much are we willing to give up, and what is the greatest impact of taking those dollars and making sure that they're invested right for the state? And that's going to be our question.
Ms. Rockymore Cummings.
So I actually didn't think that Governor Hogan's proposal was politically smart. The notion of buying up 295, expanding 495, 270, knowing that it's going to increase the use of automobiles that are emitting CO2, and knowing that we actually have a problem with climate change, I believe that it showed his insensitivity to the fact that we're actually facing global warming, not just as a state, but as a nation and a world. And I think that it highlighted his short-sightedness when it comes to our dearest part of our future, which is our children. We have to be thinking about these solutions comprehensively. And that is why I embrace a truly multimodal, interconnected transportation system. And I think we need to think about it beyond just Baltimore City and Montgomery County. I think we need to be thinking about it as a regional transportation system that's statewide, that we're thinking about in the terms of, certainly transit-oriented development, so that we're building economic opportunity even as we're building roads, even as we're building transportation opportunities. I also believe in multimodal systems, so I embrace complete streets. I want the streets to be for walkers, for bikers, for bus riders, for people who do drive automobiles, and for people who take transit. For 10 years, I've gone back and forth between Baltimore and DC in terms of commuting. I've done it by car and I've done it by transit. And I know that it's very important that we fully fund Metro. Thank you.
Thank you. Keeping on this subject, this is a yes or no. This is just a yes/no answer from you, folks. We'll start. Yes, it can be done. We'll make sure. We're going to start with Senator Madaleno and move down and then back this way. Many of you mentioned Metro. If elected, would you introduce or support a bill to provide dedicated state funding for the Metro system? Senator Madaleno.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Ross.
Mr. Shea.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Mr. Baker.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Mr. Kamenetz.
Yes.
All right, we're on the record here. You're all committed. This is a question for all again. This is a school funding question. Let's start with Mr. Shea and then move down and then back this way. So Montgomery County has 17% of the state's student population, but only gets about 11% of state school construction funding. Do you think that's fair, and what would you do to minimize the discrepancy? Mr. Shea.
Well, the statistics speak for themselves, and so do all the trailers that we've got throughout Montgomery County with no buildings for the students to participate in. This gets back to my point about building on strength. You can't expect your strong players, your strong county, to prosper and do what they can for the whole unless they're treated fairly and equally. So whether you're talking about funding for construction, or you're talking about support for higher ed, or making sure that all the K through 12 students are properly educated from early childhood through high school, so they finish high school career ready or ready for four-year colleges. Absolutely. We balance all of that out.
Ms. Vignarajah.
So this is a deeply personal issue for me, because I will say that I'm actually the only candidate on the stage who is the product of Maryland Public Schools from kindergarten through 12th grade. And like Montgomery County, Baltimore County, I think, is similar in the sense that there are very different types of schools. I went to Woodlawn High School, which many of you may have only known because it was featured in the Serial podcast because of a murder at my high school, and I'm happy to tell you whether I believe Adnan Syed did it or not. But I know what it was to go to a school that had water that you couldn't drink. I know what it was to go and learn in so-called temporary trailers, which when I went back to the school just a little less than a month ago, those trailers were still there. The sad reality is that we cannot have our children in schools where they are literally crumbling. In some of the schools in Montgomery County and Baltimore County across the state, there are cracks in the infrastructure, in the basic groundwork of those schools. We're talking about our children going to schools, Denise. And so for me, it is about how do we make sure that our kids have not just a conducive, but a safe learning environment. How are we making sure that our teachers are prepared so that they don't get put in the position of one of my teachers, who had to teach both French and Spanish literally in the same class to the same students? Those are the kinds of situations that we have in a state as affluent as ours. And this is where I think as Democrats, we have a vulnerability that we need to highlight with Governor Hogan.
Time's
Under
up.
Governor Hogan, our schools have fallen from 1st to 5th. As governor, I will make sure they return to top of class.
County Executive Baker.
Yes, no, it's not fair. For probably the last 3 years, I guess, County Executive Leggett and County Executive Kamenetz and I have gone to the General Assembly and asked for the ability to deal with the overcrowding in our schools. For Montgomery County, the student population is going up. For Baltimore County and for Prince George's County, we have some of the oldest schools in the 3 largest jurisdictions in the state. And so coming up with a formula, this is not just about Governor Hogan being there. This is actually about the leadership at the governor level, understanding that the 3 largest jurisdictions are facing this and being able to show the leadership so that General Assembly can help us put together a formula where we're building these schools. As your student population goes up, you need more space capacity. In Prince George's County, we have some of the oldest schools, and we need to replace those schools, but we need the funding. We were willing to put a 2-to-1 match up, where our counties are giving 2-to-1 for the state, but we couldn't get that deal. We all supported Baltimore City building its schools there because it's needed. But we need a governor that understands that the needs of the school system across the state and being willing to step out there and make the argument at the General Assembly, and that's what I would do as governor.
Ms. Rockmore Cummings.
So anyone who's heard me talk about education knows that it's a critical part of what I call my inclusive growth strategy. Can you hear me?
No.
Inclusive growth strategy. How about that?
Yes.
Excellent education regardless of zip code.
Got to hold it up.
Excellent education regardless of zip code, I believe, is essential for the future not only of Montgomery County but this state. And it's not ancillary to the issue of the economy. It's actually central to it. Because the product that we put out of our school system actually determines and shapes the productivity of our state's economy. And so this is serious business. It's serious business that we have 20th century facilities when we need 21st century connected facilities that allow our young people to have broadband access and the quality of education that they need with the utmost technology to make sure that they're actually coming out on top. So I view this, we're talking about dedicated funding for the Metro. We need to be talking about dedicated funding for 21st century educational facilities. And I will get that done as governor of Maryland. I also believe that we need to, of course, make sure that we're paying attention that the formula is actually adjusted not just based on the other static factors that we've been talking about, but also on the fact that where the high needs are with regards to population and the types of population and where they're moving. So making sure that we're adjusting based on the dynamics of demographic shifts. Thank you.
Mr. Jealous.
Thank you. Good morning. We don't have a money problem in our state when it comes to our schools so much as we have a priority problem. The shortfall in funding of schools across the state, and I would, even though I have kids in schools in this county, I would say we can't talk about this as in terms of 3 large jurisdictions. We've got to talk about this as far as all of the children in our state. And our state budget shortfall in education according to the Kerwin Commission, it's about 5% of our state budget. It's about $2 billion. We can find that money if we're willing to do our state budget, frankly, the way that we budget for small businesses, the ones that I invest in. You start with first things first. And if you can't fund something else, you got to fund something. You don't cut your first thing. You cut something that's your 5th or your 6th or your 10th thing. We have to make sure that our kids show up to school ready to learn. Yes, we've got to make sure that they have great facilities while they're there. But it starts with us deciding once and for all that we will fully fund the schools of our state.
Mr. Kamenetz.
I faced a problem that was very similar to Montgomery County, where I inherited some of the oldest schools in the country, and we had rising enrollment as well. And we weren't getting enough money from the state. We elected to, for every $1 we received from the state for school construction, we put 2 county tax dollars in to build or rebuild 90 schools in a $1.3 billion investment. Taking kids out of trailers and into modern learning environments. The problem is that there is not sufficient funding by the governor. Right now, the baseline for statewide school construction is $250 million. Well, in my county alone, we're spending $150 million just for one jurisdiction. We need to increase that capital budget to at least $400 million a year, and then focus on the jurisdictions that have the greatest problems with growth and have the ability to match those funds immediately. That's how we resolve this issue. Right now, the governor is politicizing the school construction program with his begathon, with his emphasis to try and score political points as opposed to solving problems. I'm the type of guy who rolls up the sleeves, looks at the issue, and solves the problem. That's the analysis and results I'll bring as governor.
Senator?
So you hear us complaining about the governor, and this isn't just partisan. It reflects the fact that Maryland's governor is the most powerful governor in the country when it comes to the budget. Truly, our state constitution has different rules than everyone else. If you do not have a governor who is willing to push to get the money into school construction, it's not going to happen. Because as all the legislators can tell you, once that budget comes in and the schools are identified, you're never going to be able to take schools away from Prince George's to give it to Montgomery or away from Frederick to give it to Howard. That's not how it works. You need a governor who's going to be putting the money in from the beginning. I was there at the table and helped develop the Baltimore City School Plan. That is a model for the rest of the state. I begged Lieutenant Governor Brown to run on that 4 years ago, to come to Montgomery County and say, I will deliver $1 billion worth of school construction in 4 years in partnership with the county and the school system in order to get things done. He didn't, and he lost. I'm not going to make that mistake. It's the reason why I'm running, so that we can move forward with Montgomery, with Prince George's, with Baltimore County, to ensure that we provide the facilities we need. It's not going to happen without a governor, and I am uniquely positioned as probably the person who knows more about the budget than potentially any other elected official in the General Assembly. But
Time's up.
it is there. I'm going to be there to make sure we get this done.
Mr. Ross.
So to provide some context, I began my career as a sixth grade public school teacher at Booker T. Washington Middle School in West Baltimore. I fell in love with a math teacher across the hall, and 23 years later, she's still teaching sixth graders in Baltimore's public schools. Our 3 kids are all in public schools. And a big reason why I'm running for governor is because I think Maryland desperately wants for an education governor, focused on early childhood education, K-12, post-secondary education, and an emphasis on the skilled trades and apprenticeships. I've got news for you. If Larry Hogan is reelected, the imbalance that exists right now, where you put 17% of the capital for school construction in and get 11% out, going back to Josh's original question, you're getting screwed right now, and it's going to get worse if he gets reelected. This is going to be the source of funds that funds what Hogan's priorities are elsewhere, because this will not be his priority. As governor, what I would want to do is reset equity in how we finance education and school construction.
Thank you. Incredibly, we're almost out of time, and while it's true that there has been plenty of agreement among the 8 candidates, I think if you kind of, there are definite differences in terms of the priorities they've set and the things they're talking about, and so I hope this has been a useful conversation for you all. I would like to end with one rapid-fire question that probably isn't going to provoke agreement among these 8. And I will start, I apologize, Ms. Cummings, with you. So the question is very simply, before we get out of here, gnats or O's? Notice the microphone was off. Oh, she said O's. Mr. Jealous.
Yeah, I'm the 4th generation of my family to go to St. James Church in West Baltimore. I've got to get into church on Sunday. I would say the O's.
Mr. Kamenetz.
Orioles.
Yeah, Senator Madaleno.
For most of you who know me in this room, it's the Capitals.
Yeah, right.
It's the Orioles and the Ravens in the Ross house.
Yeah.
So the Orioles win the American League, the Nats win the National League, they get in the World Series, 7 games, and the Orioles win.
Okay, the Hillary Clinton answer, right? Ms. Vignaraja.
So I guess this is how you will know I am not a career politician, because I would love to say the Nats, but though I am a transplant to Montgomery County and this is my home, it is the O's. I grew up in Baltimore County.
Mr. Baker.
Bowie Bay Sox.
Woo! All right. Hometown team. Love it. That's it, folks. Thank you all. They did a great job.